Welcome to the Work Trends podcast from Talent Culture. I'm your host, Megan Mbiro. Every week, I interview interesting people who are reimagining work. And be sure to check out our Work Trends Twitter chat events calendar located at talentculture.com on the podcast page. Welcome to the Talent Culture Work Trends podcast. Today we are going to be talking about a topic that's near and dear to my heart and my funny bone. Yes, the big H, humor. According to a couple of serious institutions, Wharton, MIT, London Business School, you see where I'm going here? Every giggle, cackle, and guffaw has a host of benefits beyond the punchline. Even a giggle can relieve stress, alleviate boredom, and boost productivity. If you have a loud, throw your head back, howl of a laugh, it fires up and cools down your stress response. And I think bringing this sort of oxygen-rich air to the brain actually increases the release of endorphins. Well, it's even better when you laugh together. When friends laugh in unison, their fight or flight response calms down and their neurons fire. In other words, shared laughter is a shared experience that brings people closer together. You don't need to be Jerry Seinfeld to experience the benefits of laughter. You also don't need to work in the office. The office in air quotes. Better still, executives are on board with a good laugh. 91% of executives say that a sense of humor is important to career advancement, and 84% say that those with a sense of humor do a better job. In fact, humor is one of the two most desirable traits in a leader, other than a strong work ethic. But for those whose funny bone is fossilized, or those who are worried, you're worried about breaking out, Michael Scott's humor, it helps to talk to some funny people. Our guest today, David Horning, knows a thing or two about water cooler humor, and he's here to share a few laughs with us and some advice too. But first, here's a little backdrop on David. Combining 8 years of comedy with 6 years of speaking, David Horning is on a mission to prepare teams for the shifting workplace of the 21st century. He has entertained and inspired audiences to use humor as a tool to adapt to change, relieve stress, and engage teams with programs that turn traditional leadership on its head. What's not to love about that, right? In 2019, he founded Water Cooler Comedy, a company offering corporate comedy shows, keynote presentations, training programs, leadership consulting, and more. In addition to speaking, David continues to perform stand-up and has been featured in the New York Comedy Festival. He hosts a podcast. I love this name, by the way. You can't laugh at it. To explore the ins and outs of humor theory, stand-up comedy, joke writing, and of course, humor in the workplace. And he has appeared as a guest expert on several leadership and HR podcasts. He's currently working on his first book. Welcome, David. What else could you possibly be doing right now?
Instead of working on my first book, maybe rephrase that to procrastinating. Actively procrastinating.
And you are not alone.
Oh, I know. Everybody out there in the entire world is procrastinating on their first book.
I've been procrastinating on my first book for 12 years, so I got you beat.
Sounds about right. I'm about 4 years deep into the procrastination process.
Hey, listen, welcome to Work Trends.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Where are you today?
I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, locked in this blank white asylum that is my room. Or my office.
And you know what? I am here in Portlandia in my lady cave.
All right.
So I'm hearing that, it's all about making it work, right? No pun intended.
No reason to waste space on these walls with useless paintings and things to bring the room together. Nah, we like to keep it blank.
Make it interesting for whatever that means to you. Everything we're talking about today is all about being human, right?
Absolutely.
So speaking of, why did you make the leap from comedy in New York to becoming a consultant?
Well, before comedy in New York was political science. So that was my degree in college. I've always had an interest in helping other people, and just the how has changed over the years. So from, wanting to get involved with politics to, I can make people laugh and make them feel better and, show them a good time on the stage. But then one night it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. I can make people laugh and they might remember what they laughed about for the next day. day, and if I'm lucky, maybe the next week. But then after that, it goes away. So the question that I started asking myself, because I got really into like positive psychology and human behavior and things like that, how can I teach people the same skills that I use to make myself laugh to get through difficult situations? How can I teach that as a skill? And so the more and more I researched it, the more and more I found benefits in using humor in difficult situations, in, you know, the everyday mundane monotony of the office. And it's just kind of taken off from there.
Let's talk about the word humor. What is this exactly, and how is it different from comedy or, say, just plain old jokes?
Sure. Well, humor and creativity kind of are in the same vein of things. Humor is a pattern disruptor. Basically, humor is an internal process, and everybody has their own internal process, but it allows us to be okay with having two competing thoughts at the same time. And I always use this pandemic is an opportunity. Those are two totally separate things that if you were to say that back in March of last year, people would look at you like you had three heads. But, you know, humor allows us to connect those dots in new ways. So it connects different ideas, and it connects similar ideas in new ways. So basically, it disrupts that pattern that we have preconditioned into ourselves with something new, and it introduces new possibilities. So humor basically is the crack in the door that allows us to see beyond a circumstance, a challenge, an adversity, a trauma even. And it's different from comedy because comedy is really the process, the art and science of developing your own sense of humor, where you're connecting ideas in your own head and then connecting those with an audience. So whether that's through writing a funny book, or being a funny blogger, or being a stand-up comedian, there are any number of different avenues you can take to turn that, just your sense of humor, into comedy. And humor is different from funny because funny is the most frequent outcome of using humor. So, it's not the only outcome of using humor, but it is the most frequent outcome. A lot of times when you say humor in the workplace, people misconstrue it as everybody's laughing all the time, and if you're laughing, you're not working.
You're not serious.
Right. We've got to take this serious. And it's like, pump the brakes.
Yeah, and from my perspective, everybody get a sense of humor, because if we're not laughing through what we're going through right now, if you didn't find value in humor, which, I'm biased, I'm somebody who was brought up, enjoying dancing and acting and singing and humor. I love humor personally in my life. Not everybody does, right? That's what we're talking about. So how do we make this in context to work? You're so right. We often think of it in this sort of narrow scope. There are people out there who just don't have a funny bone in their body. What do you tell them when it comes to humor being a vital skill?
Life's too short. No, there's better ways to connect that. And when it comes to humor, you don't have to be funny. That's the great thing about incorporating humor into the workplace. Recognizing what's funny. You don't have to contribute to that. You can recognize it. You can appreciate the people who are surrounded by laughter in the workplace. You can appreciate those people that are bringing the sunshine into the office, the more creative thinkers. You can be the most analytical person in the world, but anybody can develop an appreciation for humor, for laughter, for comedy, for whatever it is. We all have that capability. All it really is giving yourself permission to think outside of the box, to think beyond those strict labels that we give things. If something unexpected happens, we go through the motions of this is stressing me out and this is terrible and I hate this. And thinking like a comedian is what I call it, is taking that and looking beyond just that initial label that we give it. It's exploring the nuance and shedding the old way of looking at things, which is, everything has an absolute meaning, and anybody can develop that skill of looking beyond that.
Do you think we've changed here in the modern, we'll just call it the modern workplace? Do you think things are changing? That we're actually having humor start to play more of a role now, or not so much? I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, it's catching on. On LinkedIn, I see more people that are kind of doing what I'm doing. It seems like every day. Stanford has a class called Humor, Serious Business in their master's program in their business school. I know Yale has a course that's similar. I think Wharton does too. And on top of that, studies and surveys have shown that CEOs prefer employees who have a sense of humor. In fact, if you display your sense of humor in the workplace, you're perceived as being more intelligent, more likable, and CEOs think you're doing a better job. Not only that, but employees prefer having a boss who doesn't take themselves so seriously. So this is something that's really catching on, and especially over the last year, having to find ways to laugh, to cope, to see, again, beyond the circumstance. There's so much value in that in the workplace. And with the direction that work is heading as far as technology goes, we need to lean into what makes us human, which is our creative side and our collaborative side. And humor plays a huge role in both of those.
If you've got a leader out there, and we've got lots of these in our Work Trends community, right? If you could give one piece of advice to a leader unsure of allowing the open use of humor in the workplace or in your culture, if you're remote right now, what would it be, David?
I would say if you're nervous about it, first of all, don't overwhelm yourself. Don't try to create a giant cultural shift, or don't all of a sudden go from the serious business all day, every day to trying to tell jokes. It's going to come across as inauthentic. So be yourself. Don't try to do everything at once. And when it comes to incorporating humor into your culture, abide by your organization's values and mission and vision and goals, especially in today's world. You don't want to offend any sensibilities. You don't want to isolate anybody. You don't want anybody feeling bad because somebody told a joke about them. When humor is used in the workplace, it needs to be used through the filter of your organization's values. So if respect is one of your values and the joke that you're about to tell isn't respectful, pump the brakes. If accountability is one of your values and what you're about to say does in fact offend somebody's sensibilities and they come to you, that's on you. Having that as your baseline, having those values as your baseline is a great place to start.
And just talking about it, saying that it's okay to be like that here. I mean, people, they want guidance on what the culture is, and they want a leader who's tuned in.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know what my culture is here. Well, start asking those questions. Start talking about it. Start understanding that there's no right or wrong answer. It just is. We're all looking for answers all the time. And, sometimes the answer is exploring and not having all the answers.
And most of the time, answers just beget more questions. We're never going to have all the answers, no matter how many people try to act like they have all the answers. And that's dangerous, too. Stop doing that.
Stop doing that. It makes you look really egotistical on top of it.
And it breaks trust, because we all know that nobody's ever going to have all of the answers. So when somebody claims to, or when somebody can never be wrong, it betrays people's trust. And little by little, that creates a gap between us.
And by the way, the data on leaders and culture and engagement continue to kind of either stay flatlined or they're going the opposite direction. So yeah, we're glad you're here today, David, because we got a lot to cover on this front, right? I mean, I feel like we're just beginning. There's so much in front of us in terms of culture change.
Oh, yeah. We're scratching the surface of the tip of the iceberg here. If you're status quo, what are you doing? The whole status quo got disrupted this last year, so that was your cue.
Well, listen, time flies when we're having fun here. We have reached that time in the Work Trends podcast where we've got crystal ball time. So let's get out our crystal balls. What color is your crystal ball, by the way?
Ooh, it's a nondescript silverish, bluish, purplish, grayish, greenish.
A man of mystery.
Yeah, it's got an aura about it. It's an aura, not a color.
Well, talk to us. What are you thinking about is next for the future of work? What are your predictions?
Well, like I was saying earlier, leaning into the things that make us most human. And we're lucky because we've been gifted two incredible superpowers. That is our gift of creativity, so thinking beyond an algorithm, and our ability to cooperate with one another, our collaborative skills. Even though if you turn on the news, it seems like everybody's butting heads. You turn off the news and you actually go into a well-oiled machine of a workplace, and you see people going to bat for one another and supporting one another and giving one another the tools and guidance to succeed. So if we lean into those two skills, your workplace will be ready, knees bent, on the balls of your feet, ready for a screaming line drive at third base of change. We don't know what's going to happen next, but leaning into those two skills, especially when it comes to like automation and AI and a lot of these new technologies and remote work, leaning into what makes us most human will make us most successful. I mean, we are creators by nature. We've created everything. We created the rules so we can change the rules, and having that mindset that anything can be shifted, we can create new solutions for new problems as well as for old problems. So lead into those two skills for sure.
And If you're not funny naturally, bring in humor. You don't have to be the one up there as a stand-up comedian. Bring it in. Accept it. Good stuff here, David. I can't thank you enough for stopping on by. Your timing is impeccable.
Anybody can share a meme and laugh together. So if it makes you laugh, all you can do is share it and appreciate it and give it to the people who can make other people laugh.
Thanks so much for listening to the Work Trends podcast from Talent Culture. To learn more about the guest featured on today's show, visit the show notes for this episode at talentculture.com. And do me a favor, help us spread the word. Subscribe to Work Trends wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a rating, a review on iTunes, share it with the world, and I will see each and every one of you next time. Thanks to listening to Work Trends from Talent Culture. Join us every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern for a live Twitter chat with our podcast guest. To learn more about guests featured on today's show, visit the show notes for this episode at talentculture.com and help us spread the word. Subscribe to Work Trends wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a rating, review in iTunes. Share Work Trends with your coworkers, your friends. Look forward to it. See you next time.